Tonight we journey into one of history's darkest times, a time when death did not come with armies or earthquakes, but with something much scarier: silence. The silence of empty villages, empty fields, and streets where grass grew through the cracks in old stones because no one was left to walk on them. We are learning about the Black Death, a plague that did not just kill people. It wiped out whole groups of people, changed the map of the world, and left scars in our memory that we still feel today. This was not a normal sickness. It was a disaster that moved slowly across continents, leaving a world so changed that nothing was ever the same again. Between 1330 and 1353, an invisible killer moved through Asia, Africa, and Europe. It cut the world's population from about 475 million down to around 350 million. These are not just numbers. They are families that disappeared, languages that were never spoken again, and cities that stood empty for hundreds of years. So turn down the lights, let the room get quiet, and come with me back to a time when the whole human race seemed close to the end. A strong reminder of how easily our world can break and how fast everything we think is safe can disappear into darkness. Imagine this: you are living in the year 1347, and scary stories are spreading faster than fire through the trading roads of Europe. Strange news from the east. Stories of whole cities going quiet, of ships reaching ports with no one alive on board, of a sickness so bad it could kill a strong person in just days. But these are not just stories. They are warnings of something that had already been destroying the world for more than 10 years. The plague, what we now call the Black Death, did not come with loud trumpets or war cries. It moved across continents like a shadow, leaving empty houses and graves with no names. The sickness that changed human history was caused by a tiny germ called Yersinia pestis. People in the 1300s knew nothing about germs or the tiny world we cannot see. To them, this was God's punishment, demons, or maybe the end of the world. They were wrong about why it happened, but they were right about how huge the disaster was. Yersinia pestis is very good at hiding and changing. It can live in many animals, spread in different ways, and change itself so it is hard to stop. The germ mostly lives in small animals like rats, mice, and squirrels, but it is the fleas that bite these animals that carry death to people. When a sick flea bites a rat, the germs grow so fast inside the flea that they block its stomach. The flea gets very hungry but cannot eat properly, so it bites over and over, spitting infected blood into every new bite. That is how the plague spreads. Here is the really scary part. When rats start dying from the plague, the fleas do not die with them. They jump to new animals looking for blood. In the crowded, dirty towns of the Middle Ages, the easiest new animals to find were people. The plague showed up in 3 main forms, and each one was worse than the last. Bubonic plague was the most common. It attacked the body's lymph nodes. Victims got huge, painful lumps called buboes in their groin, armpits, and neck. The lumps turned black and hurt terribly. They could grow as big as apples. About 30 to 75 out of every 100 people with bubonic plague died. Pneumonic plague attacked the lungs. It turned a person's breath into a weapon. It spread straight from person to person when someone coughed or sneezed. Victims coughed blood and died in just days. Their lungs filled with liquid and they drowned inside. Almost everyone who got pneumonic plague died. Septicemic plague was the worst. The germs went straight into the blood. It caused huge bleeding inside the body and organs to stop working. Dark purple patches appeared on the skin where blood vessels broke. People often died in hours. Almost no one survived septicemic plague. What made the Black Death so terrible was not only how deadly it was also how unpredictable it was. The germ could hide quietly in animals for years, then suddenly explode into towns and kill thousands. It traveled with traders and goods across huge distances. It hid in clothes, in boxes, in anything people carried. The plague reached Europe much earlier than most people think. The first big outbreak happened in the Tian Shan Mountains in Central Asia in the early 1300s. It had lived there in rodents for hundreds of years. From there it moved along the Silk Road, the great trading path that joined East and West. By 1330, the plague was in China. It killed huge numbers of people and helped bring down the Yuan dynasty. Old Chinese writings tell of cities where the living could not bury all the dead, where whole families vanished overnight, and streets were full of bodies no one dared to touch. The sickness moved west through Central Asia and into the Middle East. By 1346, it reached the Crimean Peninsula. That was the jumping-off place that would change Europe forever. At the trading town of Kaffa, today called Fedosia, the plague met something new: ships. Kaffa was a busy port owned by traders from Genoa, Italy. It was being attacked by the Mongol army led by Khan Janibeg. When plague broke out in the Mongol army, the leader did a terrible thing. According to an old writer named Gabriel de Mussy, the Mongols loaded dead plague bodies onto catapults and threw them over the city walls to spread the sickness. True or not, the result was the same. The plague got inside Kaffa, and from there it got onto ships going to Europe. In October 1347, 12 ships arrived in the port of Messina, Sicily. People who went to meet them saw something that would frighten Europe for years. Almost everyone on the ships was dead or dying. Their skin was covered with black boils that leaked blood and pus. The leaders of Sicily were so scared they told the ships to leave right away, but it was too late. The rats and fleas had already jumped off. The Black Death was now in Europe, and millions were going to die. The ships did not just bring sick sailors, they brought infected rats and fleas. As the ships stopped at ports all around the Mediterranean Sea, those tiny creatures went ashore with the cargo. They spread into cities that were perfect places for the plague to grow. Cities in the Middle Ages were very dirty compared to today. There was no good way to get rid of garbage or human waste. It was thrown into the streets or rivers. Houses were packed close together. Many families lived in tiny rooms. Rats loved these places. Where rats lived, fleas lived too. The timing could not have been worse. Europe was already weak from many problems that historians call the crisis of the 14th century. A great famine from 1315 to 1322 had killed millions and left people hungry and sick. A colder time called the Little Ice Age hurt farming and caused trouble. The 100 Years' War between England and France had started in 1337 and was using up money and lives. The Catholic Church had two popes fighting each other. The old system of lords and peasants was starting to break. Into this weak and messy world came a sickness that used every problem to spread faster. It killed rich and poor, young and old, priests and ordinary people the same. It loved crowded cities, dirty streets, no real doctors, and trade roads that carried it far in just weeks. The Black Death was not only a sickness disaster, it was the perfect mix of germ, bad living conditions, and bad luck that made one of the worst pandemics ever. And as those 12 ships sat in the harbor of Messina with their deadly passengers already running into the city, Europe was about to fall into a nightmare that would change it forever. The silence was coming. Villages would empty. Cities would become graveyards. Whole areas would grow wild again as the plague cut through people like a sharp blade through tall grass. The Black Death had arrived, and the world would never be the same. The Black Death forced people to invent new ways to fight disease. Venice started the first quarantine system in 1348. They made ships coming from places with the plague wait 40 days before they could enter the port. The word quarantine comes from the Italian words for 40 days. People picked 40 days not because of science, but because 40 was a special number in the Christian religion. Jesus had gone without food for 40 days. Moses had stayed on Mount Sinai for 40 days, and the big flood in the Bible had lasted 40 days. Even though it started for religious reasons, quarantine turned out to be a good way to protect public health. Other Italian cities soon copied the idea. Milan suffered less from the plague than most big cities. Milan was very strict about quarantine and keeping sick people away from others. City leaders locked infected houses with the sick people still inside. They put guards outside so no one could go in or out. They burned everything that had belonged to plague victims. These tough rules upset many people, but they probably helped stop the plague from spreading more. Making quarantine work needed new kinds of doctors and city workers. Cities had to teach officials how to spot plague signs. They made rules for keeping possibly sick people separate. They set up ways to bring food and help to people stuck at home. All this helped start public health as its own real job. The plague also pushed better training for doctors. So many doctors died that there was a big need for new ones. At the same time, it gave a chance to change how doctors learned. Universities started to teach more by doing real work and looking closely at sick people instead of only reading old books. The University of Montpellier in France led the way. Teachers there made students look at real patients and cut open dead bodies to learn. This hands-on learning was brand new when most teaching had been just talking about old writers. The plague also helped improve surgery and knowledge of the body. With so many people dying, doctors got to see inside bodies more than ever before. Cutting open bodies after death, which was rare before, happened much more as doctors tried to figure out how the plague killed people. These studies showed new things about how the body is built and works. Doctors started to understand how the lymph nodes help fight sickness, even though they did not know about germs yet. They also learned more about the heart, blood, and lungs. That knowledge helped treat other sicknesses later. The plague years brought new medical books that cared more about what doctors really saw than old ideas. Doctors wrote books based on watching plague patients themselves instead of just explaining ancient writers. These books were called plague treatises. They started a new kind of medical writing that helped doctors for hundreds of years. One of the most important was written by John of Ardern, an English surgeon who treated many plague patients. John said careful watching, correct guessing of the sickness, and useful treatments mattered most. His book was different from the dreamy writing of most old medical books. The plague also made doctors care more about stopping sickness before it started and about public health. Doctors saw that keeping people healthy was often better than trying to cure them after they got sick. They paid more attention to food, exercise, cleanliness, and things in the air or water that could make people sick. The idea of a healthy way of living became popular after the plague. Guides told people exactly what to eat, how much to sleep, how to exercise, and other things to stay well and avoid disease. Many ideas came from old beliefs about body fluids, not modern science, but they were a big step toward trying to prevent sickness. The plague also helped grow the study of medicines and how to make them. Normal treatments did not work against the plague, so doctors tried new plants and mixtures. This led to better testing of medicines. It helped start modern pharmacy. Drug sellers used to just sell ready-made things. Now they started making their own medicines. They wrote down exactly what they used and what happened. They worked closer with doctors to find new cures. This teamwork between doctors and drug makers became normal in medicine. The plague years started doctors focusing on just one kind of sickness. Before, every doctor treated everything. The hard work of fighting the plague made some doctors become experts in certain parts. Some got good at figuring out who had the plague. Others got good at treating it. Some worked on ways to stop it. This was clearest with plague doctors, who only treated sicknesses that spread fast. They made special clothes to protect themselves. The famous bird-like masks held sweet-smelling things to keep bad air away. Their cures often did not work, but plague doctors were an early kind of doctor who only did one job. That idea grew bigger later. The plague changed big organizations too. Hospitals used to be mostly church places that cared for dying people's souls. They started to become real places to cure sick bodies. The plague showed cities needed planned medical care. Hospitals hired trained doctors and made better ways to look after patients. The plague also led to brand new health groups. Many Italian cities made health boards to handle sickness outbreaks. These groups mixed doctor knowledge with city power. They were an early kind of public health office that got bigger in later years. The long-term effect of the plague on medicine was huge. The big crisis made doctors drop old ways that did not work and start new ones based on watching closely and trying things out. Germ science would come 500 years later, but the plague started the ideas of real scientific medicine that made people live longer. The Black Death was a terrible disaster, but it also pushed medical progress forward. Doctors who lived through it had to face how little they really knew. They started the long road to better ways to understand and treat sickness. Their work built the base for the big medical wins that finally made huge disease outbreaks rare. The Black Death did not just kill people, it killed a whole economic system and helped start modern capitalism. The huge loss of people, about 1/3 of Europe in only 5 years, caused shocks to money, trade, work, and what wealth even meant. Before the plague, Europe's money life was mostly farming and lords owning everything. Land was the main way to be rich. Most people were peasant farmers tied to a lord's land. Trade happened, but only a few merchants did it. Money mattered, but most deals were promises or trading things, not cash. The plague broke this system by killing so many workers. With 1/3 gone, the people left suddenly had power. Peasants who used to be stuck to the land could now ask for pay to work. Skilled workers who had to follow guild rules could charge high prices. The basic rule of who had power, owners or workers, changed forever. Right away, everything got messy. Crops rotted in fields because no one picked them. Animals died with no one to care for them. Trade roads built over hundreds of years stopped working as merchants died and cities emptied. The whole careful balance of old society fell apart, but out of the mess came new chances. Each person left had more land, food, and things than any group before. Empty farms could be joined into bigger, better ones. Empty city houses could be taken by families moving up. Wealth ended up in fewer hands. That gave both the money and the reason to try new ways of doing business. The big shortage of workers made people use machines that saved work for the first time in a big way. When workers were few and costly, bosses wanted tools to do more with less people. Water wheels and windmills, used mostly to grind grain before, now pulled cloth or worked big hammers for metal. The cloth-making business, one of the biggest in Europe, changed a lot. Old guild rules that said exactly how many helpers and how to work started to break. Bosses could not find enough workers. This let new business people try fresh ways. The putting out system started then and grew into early factory work later. Instead of everyone working in one guild shop, merchants gave raw wool or cloth to people at home to work on, then picked up the finished pieces to sell. This way was more flexible and got around strict guild rules that stopped new ideas. The plague also sped up banking and lending. Old lord promises were hard to make people keep. More deals used real money. Everyone needed coins and loans. Banks grew and made smarter ways to handle money. Italian banks that were already trying new things found lots of new work after the plague. The Medici Bank, started in 1397, became one of the strongest in Europe by lending to traders, factory owners, and even kings. Its success came from helping trade and new projects in the changed world the plague made. Fewer people but more money for each person changed what people bought. Richer survivors wanted fancy things. That made new jobs for skilled workers and pushed better ways to make nice cloth, metal items, and art. Making high-quality goods grew fast. Cities like Florence, Venice, and Bruges became centers for luxury items sold all over Europe and farther. Wanting better things became normal for Europe's growth. The plague changed farming too. The old system of peasants working for lords got hard to keep. Many lords made more money turning grain fields into sheep fields. Sheep needed fewer workers, and wool sold for high prices because everyone wanted cloth. Changing from growing food to raising animals changed the land for hundreds of years. Big pieces of farmland turned to grass. This started the enclosure movement that later changed English villages, focusing on wool-tied England closer to cloth cities in Flanders and Italy. Cities felt the change just as much. Many lost half their people or more. The ones left often got better houses, more chances to start businesses, and more say in city decisions. Fewer crowded people made cities cleaner and healthier, so new sicknesses came less. Some smaller cities grew big after the plague. Antwerp became a huge trading city by using the broken old routes and new chances. The plague helped new kinds of companies start. Old guilds that controlled city work lost power. Newer, freer groups, partnerships, share companies, grew to use the new money and risks. Insurance, which was small before, grew fast. People who saw friends die and lose everything wanted to pay to be safe from the next disaster. This made better insurance plans and real insurance businesses. Trade between countries got hit hard at first. Routes broke and less stuff moved. But later it got better. Fewer people with more money wanted fancy things from far away. New ways to make and sell things made trade easier and richer. Old land roads to Asia, hurt by the plague, never got as big again. That pushed sea travel. People looked for new water roads to Africa and across the ocean. This helped start the Age of Discovery in the 1400s. The plague changed money rules and helped capitalism grow. More deals used cash. Wealth stayed with fewer people. That made it easier to save big money and start businesses instead of just owning land. Making profit, which the church used to say was bad, became okay. Rules against charging interest started to weaken because everyone needed loans. This change helped modern capitalism grow. The plague pushed better ways to keep money records. More complicated deals and more cash meant merchants needed good lists of what they owned, owed, and earned. Debentry bookkeeping and other new ways started then and became normal. The long-term money results of the Black Death were huge and lasted centuries. The plague ended Europe's old lord and peasant system and started modern capitalism. Losing so many people put money in fewer hands, made workers rare so new machines came, and broke old rules so new business could grow. The money revolution that started with the Black Death kept going for hundreds of years and led to factories and today's world money system. The plague did not just kill people. It killed one way of making money and gave birth to the system that ruled the world for the next 700 years. The people left after the Black Death got a changed world from disaster, but they also got chances to get rich and try new things never seen before. The plague cleared away stiff old rules and made room for fresh, faster, better ways to work and grow money. In the clearest way, the Black Death was the helper that brought modern capitalism into the world. The Black Death did not just change how Europeans lived. It completely changed how they fought and died. The huge loss of people in the 1300s reshaped armies, fighting ways, and weapons for hundreds of years. Before the plague, wars were won by heavy horse soldiers, knights in armor. They were the top fighters in the lord system. Knights cost a lot to train and keep, but they beat foot soldiers easily. All of society was built to support these horse fighters and their helpers. Lords gave land for fighting service. When a king needed soldiers, he called lords who had to send a set number of knights for usually 40 days. This worked for a long time, but needed lots of people and steady rules. The Black Death broke that. So many died that old armies could not be raised. Whole noble families died out. Others became too small to send fighters. The land for service deal fell apart. At the same time, the plague opened doors for new fighting ideas. Fewer workers made old big armies too costly. Lords could not pay for many foot soldiers anymore. This pushed people to find cheaper, smarter ways to fight. The biggest new thing was gunpowder weapons used more. Guns and cannons came to Europe early in the 1300s, but were rough, slow, and costly. The money and people changes after the plague gave reasons and cash to make them better. Rich survivors and new merchant families had money to spend on costly weapons. Fewer normal soldiers meant armies needed ways to make small groups stronger. Gunpowder did that. Big cannons were first used to break castle walls. They scared people as much as they hurt. The loud boom and huge holes broke fighting spirit. Small guns anyone could carry changed everything too. Early handguns were not great, but a farmer with a few weeks of practice could kill a knight who trained his whole life. Making killing easier for normal people changed society and power. The plague sped up paid full-time armies. Old short-service night calls did not work for longer, harder wars. Kings started paying soldiers to fight anytime, not just 40 days. Paid fighter groups, called free companies or condottieri in Italy, became common. They stayed ready all year, had special skills, and went wherever the money was. The White Company, led by English knight Sir John Hawkwood, was famous. They fought all over Italy for the highest payer. Hawkwood got rich showing war could be a job if you lived. Paid armies let leaders train soldiers to fight together in tricky ways impossible with short-time knights. This led to better plans on the battlefield and real war builders as a job. Swiss foot soldiers with long spears in tight groups beat even the best horse knights. The Swiss built their way of fighting partly because the plague made old ways impossible in their mountains. Swiss success spread. Other places made their own paid foot soldiers. Slowly, the knight on horseback lost his top place. The plague pushed new tools besides guns. Fewer skilled metal workers made people find faster ways to make swords and armor. New metal work helped army and everyday life. Best plate armor came right after the plague to stop new weapons. Armor makers got so good the best armor stopped almost anything, but stronger guns soon beat even the best armor. Armies started caring more about moving fast and shooting than heavy protection. This made horse knights less useful. The plague changed sea fighting too. It broke old sea trade and gave money for bigger ships. Rich people paid for new designs. Cannons on ships changed everything. Ships became floating gun castles with rows of cannons. This started the big warship that ruled seas for hundreds of years. The plague pushed new fort building. Old castles could not stop cannons. Builders made low, thick walls with pointed corners, called trace Italian or star forts, to bounce cannon balls. Making these needed math and building skill, so war building became its own job. All these army changes cost a lot. Only rich kings and cities could pay for guns and paid soldiers. This helped big strong countries grow and small ones shrink. It pushed kings to collect taxes better and make stronger governments. The plague changed who fought. Before, mostly nobles and their men fought. After, paid armies took men from every class. Kings now needed normal soldiers to stay loyal, not just nobles. The plague made people think about death more. Everyone saw life was short. Armies wanted fast, big wins instead of long, slow fights. Nobles and common soldiers died together from plague, not just swords. This made army rules less strict about class. The long changes to war were huge. New weapons, paid armies, and plans shaped fighting for centuries. Guns led to the big war changes of the 1500s and 1600s. Paid armies helped strong countries grow. The Black Death did not just kill people, it killed the old knight way of war. New armies were more trained, used better tools, and could kill more. The plague changed how Europeans lived and how they fought and died. It started army ideas that shaped the world for hundreds of years. From the ashes of the Black Death grew one of the greatest bursts of art, writing, thinking, and science in history, the Renaissance. This bright time did not just happen after the plague. It grew because of what the plague did to people and society. It seems strange that so much death could lead to so much beauty and new ideas. The answer is how the plague shook everything and made room for new things. The clearest reason was money. Losing so many people left more money for the ones still alive. They could spend on art, books, and learning instead of just food. In Florence, families like the Medici got very rich partly because they lived through the plague and used the new chances. Rich people were needed to pay for big paintings, statues, and studies. The fancy art and deep thinking of the Renaissance cost a lot. The plague made just the right kind of rich supporters, but money was not all. The plague broke trust in old leaders, doctors, priests, kings. If doctors could not cure, priests could not save, and kings could not protect, maybe old rules were wrong. This opened doors for fresh thinking. Humanists like Petrarch and Boccaccio turned from church talk to real human feelings and successes. They read old Greek and Roman books to learn about people, not just God. The plague made death real and close. It also showed people could rebuild better. This helped humanists believe people could do great things. The plague changed how people saw time and life. Old thinking said Earth life was short, get ready for heaven. The plague made death sudden for everyone, but also made life feel more valuable. People wanted to do big things now and be remembered. Renaissance art and books show this, less about heaven, more about earth, people, and beauty. Perspective in painting is a good example. Old art was flat and symbolic. New artists like Brunelleschi and Masaccio used math to make pictures look deep and real. This showed new trust in people understanding the world. The plague hurt old schools and churches that kept knowledge. Many died, books were lost, but this let new schools start. The University of Florence opened in 1349 as the plague left. It taught useful things and human ideas, not just church lessons. New schools grew all over. The plague helped find lost old books. When churches and rich houses emptied, people found hidden writings. When Constantinople fell in 1453, Greek teachers brought books west. The printing press, made around 1450 by Gutenberg, spread ideas fast. Rich cities and more money made books sell. Cheap books let normal people read. This helped humanism and science grow. The plague made art think about death a lot, but instead of sad pictures, artists showed life stronger and more beautiful. Leonardo da Vinci cut open bodies, many plague dead, to learn how people are built. His paintings look real and full of feeling. Michelangelo's David and Sistine Chapel ceilings show humans as strong and important. Writers like Boccaccio wrote the Decameron right after the plague in Florence. It uses the plague as a frame for stories about all parts of life: funny, sad, good, bad. Wanting to be famous and leave something lasting grew after seeing how fast everything can disappear. The idea of a person great at many things, like Leonardo, painter, scientist, builder, came from wanting to do as much as possible in a short life. The plague broke old class rules. Smart people from anywhere could rise if good at something. This helped new rich families pay for new art and ideas. Science started growing because the plague showed old medicine failed. People wanted real watching and testing. This helped start the scientific way: look, guess, test. The Renaissance spread slowly from Italy in the 1300s to the rest of Europe over 200 years. Each place made its own style, but everywhere it meant seeing people as able to do great things instead of small and waiting for God. This was not just pretty pictures. It was an answer to living through the worst disaster ever. The Black Death killed millions and broke the old world, but from the broken pieces grew a new belief in what humans can do. That belief started some of the best art, books, science, and thinking ever. The plague did not end the old time. It started the modern one and woke up the human spirit to change the world. The Black Death ended officially in 1353, but its effects lasted hundreds of years and still show today. The plague did more than kill. It changed the path of history in politics, money, religion, and culture forever. The clearest leftover was fewer people. Europe had maybe 75 million before, after about 50 million. It took almost 200 years to get back, and the changes lasted longer. So many empty villages stayed empty. In England alone, almost 3,000 villages listed in 1086 were gone by 1400. Their stones are under grass now, quiet proof of how bad it was. Empty farm land grew into forests again. Woods came back bigger than in centuries. Animals and wolves returned where people had pushed them out. Some people's genes helped them live through the plague. Those genes spread more. Today, Europeans have marks in their blood from ancestors who beat the plague. The plague made kings stronger. Fewer nobles and more money per person made it easier to rule. Kings built real governments with paid workers, armies, and taxes. This helped make modern countries. Countries learned sickness crosses borders. That idea grew into working together on health later. Money-wise, the plague pushed from lords to buying and selling. Richer survivors had money to grow trade. New banks, insurance, and records started. Europe's sailing and taking land in the 1400s came partly from plague money changes. Religion got shaken. People asked why God let it happen. That helped later fights about church power, but new ways to pray and love saints grew too. Culture got its biggest gift. The Renaissance, science, and free thinking all started growing because old ways failed in the plague. Pictures of dancing skeletons reminded everyone death comes for all. New medicine and health rules, quarantine, clean cities, started then and still save lives. People learned government must protect or people might want new leaders. Death hit everyone the same, rich, poor, king, farmer. That helped ideas of equal rights grow slowly. Forests grew back and animals returned. That helped nature heal. Everyone saw life is short and the world can break fast. That fear and hope built insurance, help for poor, and plans for bad times. The plague hit more than Europe. It started the big swap of sickness when Europeans went to new places. But the smart ideas from fighting plague helped cure sickness everywhere later. The plague broke trust in old leaders and started looking for real facts. That led to science and light of reason. It made people move up if they worked hard. It taught caring for weak people together. New schools taught useful things. Cities got cleaner streets and help services. Ships got better, armies got guns and paid soldiers. Countries learned to work together sometimes. Money ideas, profit, banks, companies all grew faster. Forests and animals came back. We learned we are weak but strong. The Black Death was the worst thing that happened to Europe. But it also started many of the best things. It broke the old world and let the modern one grow, with science, freedom, health, and hope. Its shadow shows we can lose everything fast, but we can also build again better. Today, when we face sickness, climate trouble, or big changes, the old plague still teaches. Work together, think new, help each other, and never give up. The tiny germ that killed half of Europe also helped free people's minds, grow money, cure sickness, and wake the human spirit. After more than 600 years, the Black Death still shows both our weakness and our amazing power to rise again.